All right, guys, so we got some official dev team responses to some big features that were found, some leaks, and a few things like that that have came out about Diablo 4 here recently. I haven't seen any of this, so this is going to be my first time sort of catching it and reacting to it. We're going to look at it together. We're going to see what news is in here, what sort of information is in here, and we're going to have a great, sort of conversation and talk about it. So let's hop in and let's look at this together.
So we've got a mix of both official Diablo 4 news and discoveries by data miners. So yeah, data miners have been very busy digging into the Diablo 4 beta files.
How do you guys feel about data miners? So like I'm a gamer, right? And I like to hear the newest news and content and all that. But with the way games work anymore and the fact that like so much is preloaded onto your PC, it's really hard for game companies to keep things secret, or like for there to be secrets in the game that have to be found out. A lot of people just go through and they comb through all the data files and figure out how to read them and then just pull all the information out. And it's kind of good, kind of bad. Because one, it can get you really hyped for all the things that are like upcoming. But in another sort of like breath, it can really take the wind out of the sails for the devs who had something very fun or sneaky or interesting kind of put up for you to kind of find on your own. I don't know how I honestly feel about it, because part of me wants to have all the information as somebody who came from being somebody who worked that gamed. I didn't have the time to sort of go through everything myself and find it all, right? So it was nice to have somebody that could find it for me and then I could go experience it. But then as somebody who now plays games a lot more hardcore, one might even consider it a job, it kind of does take a little bit of the wind out of the sails, because there's no sort of like mystery for you to go find. People have like kind of found the information and then they just sprint to it so they can make the video to try to get their name out there. You hate it personally, like Destiny spoilers kill you over that shit. And that's the thing. So like, I'm trying to figure out how people feel about it. Because I do think a lot of it depends on what kind of person you are. Some people really like the sense of exploration, and other people want the sense of experience. And the exploration is just part of the way they get there. And if you can knock that out for them so they can get in and experience it in the 3 hours a week they have to game, they're way more happy.
Once again, and I've discovered a big feature that will greatly improve.
So I'm probably not the only person that like played the Barbarian during the beta, and I was actually really unimpressed with the leap. Maybe because I just didn't spend enough time like running solely a Barbarian to figure out what all I could and couldn't leap. But I felt like I couldn't leap as much stuff as they made it look like in the demos and like the gameplay footage, because they made leap look a lot more fun than it was.
The experience on PC, but what about consoles? Plus, fans are rallying against a key feature of the Deluxe and Ultimate Editions, calling out Blizzard and Activision for unfair practices. But
I'm curious to see what fans are rallying around, because I fully believe, and it's not anything against these guys, but I honestly think that content creators and people in the media overblow general fan reactions and take things that a vocal minority sort of see as an issue and project that out and say, they build a straw man saying all of the community feels this way, and then they project these feelings out there and then use that to kind of say, look at this big scary thing. When realistically, like a very small minority of the player base really feels that way or even gives a shit, but then everybody's being lumped into this big sort of straw man that's been built to like say these people. So I'm curious to hear this too.
There's also a catch to this feature, plus official responses from Blizzard about classes and the Druid, the Diablo 4 post-launch team size versus World of Warcraft, and much more.
Now that I'm curious to see what the live service team size for Diablo 4 is going to be compared to World of Warcraft. Versus how, like, if they're splitting it like 60% new content, 40% post-launch, or how they're going to do it.
All right, so let's get into the headline. First of all, starting out with this one right here. It says Diablo 4 Datamined reveals support for a killer PC gaming feature. This is really cool. Let's get into this now. Remember, with data mines, everything is with a grain of salt, but I do think we will eventually get this feature down the road for Diablo 4, as explained in the article. So it goes on to say this: with the beta now over for Blizzard's upcoming action RPG Diablo 4, fans of the game have been doing some serious digging just about
DLSS support,
sifted and scrutinized while the beta files remain on their systems. These intrepid data miners have discovered that not only is the previously announced DLSS 3 support in the beta files already, but also direct storage. And if you're wondering what this is,
I am, because to me it just sounds like ray tracing mumbo jumbo, because I don't really know all the ins and outs of ray tracing, but that sounds like there was pretty much like ray tracing support in the beta, just not turned on. And Diablo's already said they're going to have ray tracing, so it's not a surprise that it's in the files. But let's listen.
This is extremely important, so check it out right here. It goes on to describe direct storage as a new Microsoft API that is designed to reroute streams of storage data from the CPU to the GPU for the purpose of decompression. Due to the highly parallelized nature of GPUs, decompression can be processed at a much faster rate of GPUs, which frees up the CPU to do other tasks and allows for significantly faster loading times. So this essentially allows us to have much faster loading times for Diablo 4. So yeah, the biggest question.
I didn't think that the load times were bad for Diablo 4. I mean, they were definitely there, and if they can do an improvement to get them down some, I'm very, very happy about that. But I mean, I didn't think they were astronomically bad. It's good news. Like, it's definitely good news, right? It's 100% good news. But I think for the vast majority of like gamers, they're going to be like, oh, so the game's going to load faster. Cool.
Question is, when would we be seeing this feature for Diablo 4?
Honestly, with these named, that's the thing, right, bro? Like, I didn't realistically feel like the load times for Diablo 4 were that bad. And like the PC I'm running it on isn't the best PC. It's not a bad PC, but it's not the best. I plan on getting a better PC later on this year. But it wasn't an overall bad PC. And I had plenty of frame rates and everything else. Like, I didn't have any real performance issues other than the issues that were inherent to the beta, like stuttering and shit like that. But that didn't really have anything to do. 10-year-old PC just fine. That's what I'm thinking, Ern. So like this is good news. But I don't know that it's news. You know what I mean? Like, most people are gonna be like, huh, cool. I don't know. Maybe I'm oversimplifying most people. But I just think most people are going to be like, huh, all right. Anything cool?
Or so it says this. It says, while it could yet be updated, the version found in the beta files was 1.02, which lags behind the advances that 1.1 brings. Now, Direct Storage 1.1 could allow Diablo much faster loading times by calling on the graphics card to decompress files on the go. So, I think that it's just out of date in the beta files.
It's out of date in the beta files, because the beta, I've went over this before. The beta was probably the most stable version of the game they had, not necessarily the most up-to-date game. People have to keep that in mind. Most stable versus most up-to-date are not going to be the same thing.
But if they did anything with direct storage, it of course would be the latest version. Now, this is also extremely important, even when we compare what's going on with PS5 and Xbox Series X, because those platforms have some major technology behind loading and streaming. Now, since Microsoft and Sony currently employ similar technology on the Xbox Series XS and PS5 to better take advantage of the SSD inside the consoles.
So what they do, right? They do. But what really happens is the games are developed around the new gen or the current gen consoles, and the current gen consoles only have two different formats, the one for Xbox and the one for PlayStation. That's it. So when you're developing a game, you can eke out every last ounce of performance because you know everything about the configuration you're going for. Compared to my computer versus Rodon's computer versus Ern's computer versus BamPal's computer, we all have different computers. and trying to build something that ekes out every last ounce of performance in all 4 of those different configurations is going to be a lot harder. So if they're developing a system at Microsoft or whatever to help with like the storage and offloading it, that's going to be great, but that's not why. Like the Microsoft and Sony's tech does take better advantage of maybe takes better advantage of the technology it has, but honestly, it's just one set of tech, and it's easier to develop for that than it is to develop for everything that's out there for PC gaming.
So it seems like PC is really wanting to adapt that technology and really utilize what basically the PS5 and Xbox Series X can do.
Right. We just went over it. I'm not going to rehash it.
It goes on to say this right here.
Not to mention, instead of 2 separate components. Exactly. And they only have one set of memory, and that memory is used for everything. And you're not trying to split up which set of memory your GPU or your PC's memory is doing what. And it's just a more streamlined system to develop for it, and that's why people do it, because it's easier.
Despite The Witcher 3 getting direct storage support later in 2023, Diablo 4 would be the second game to support it on PC. That's pretty crazy. And it goes on to say, this depends on whether Blizzard plans to implement it, and it isn't just leftover files from a previous build.
Blizzard would be stupid not to implement it if it's out there. If the system already exists and Blizzard has access to it in any capacity, they would be dumb not to try to implement some version of it because of the quality of life improvements it's going to be.
Build of the game. Now, direct storage hasn't been widely adopted as of yet, with the tech still in its infancy. Once major players like Blizzard hopefully adopt the software, we should start to see loading times come right down across the board. So you can see that this feature seems to be very impressive, and I imagine that more and more games on the PC side of things will begin adopting this technology, especially as open world games get more detailed and more complicated. You're going to want to see this technology in your...
Well, I mean, you're going to want to see this technology in every game if it's something that devs only have to build around one thing. Devs build around this open storage, and then the open storage deals with offloading everything to your GPU and deals with assessing all these different things in your system. And then Microsoft is the one that's making the decision on how to do all that, and game devs go, I don't even have to think about it. I just make it for open storage. Like, of course, it's going to be a win for the industry.
Or game. So it might help with post-launch type content if, in fact, the world of Diablo 4 continues expanding seamlessly outward and that map gets bigger and bigger.
And the map looks like there's room for it to get bigger. It doesn't look like it's just an island. You know what I mean? Like, it looks like there's room that they could continue to expand the map, or they could do like a World of Warcraft thing where all of a sudden just next year another whole fucking island shows up across the pond, and then you have to go over there, and it's a whole new fucking game.
Which is something that we might actually see happen in the future. All right, so we got to talk about what fans are really upset about when it comes to the deluxe edition and the ultimate editions.
All right, this is where I want to pay attention. What are fans upset about?
Of Diablo 4. So it goes on to say this right here. Diablo 4 fans are rallying against the concept of early access, and they're not too hopeful for a smooth launch after. We'll see what happens with launch. I'm expecting that to have some major bumps in the road, of course. But let's get into the actual thread here, which was one of the most talked about threads, of course. It says this right here. Zoom it out. Game releases 4 days early by standard.
Okay. Let me put this in perspective. Okay? I just want to put one thing in perspective. Before this conversation goes like any further. This number right here. There were millions of people that played the beta. Millions. And a Reddit post talking about the game releasing early being a problem has 24,000 upvotes on Reddit. Now, I'm not a fucking mathematician here, okay? I'm not a mathematician. If you take 24,000 and divide it by, so that's like, what is that? That's a percent, right? Do I need to move the decimal place over to be 2%? But the point here is that 2% is not a large number. Like, I don't know where you're from, but 2% is not a large number. Now, I'm not saying these are the only people to feel this way, but people have to put things in perspective. And I just want to point that out before, like, the conversation moves further. Is that there are some people upset about this, but I would call it a minority.
Third edition to play late, this shouldn't be a thing. So yes, you get up to 4 days early access if you pre-purchase the deluxe or ultimate editions. If you didn't know, I'm sure you did. Let me know what edition you did buy, but I do get the complaint here because games are already getting more expensive. You know, they're not $60 like they used to be. They're now $70, and it was previously promised that, hey, you know what? We're going all digital pretty much with all of our games, which means we don't have to package them as much. We don't have to worry about creating discs. The games are going to be cheaper. That's not the case of what's...
The games are cheaper. So, I'll have to, like, the games are cheaper. If you account for inflation and everything else, game price has not kept up with inflation. That's why we've talked about it before. That's why, like, cosmetics and in-game stuff like that, like, companies lean on that to sort of bolster their bottom line. So, like, games are cheaper, and, you know, games going to $70 from $60. They've been $60 for fucking 10 years or whatever. Like, they've been $60 for a long time. So the fact that they're just moving up and it's not keeping pace with inflation, like, I don't see that. So,
in fact, it's the polar opposite. Teams are getting bigger, technology's getting more complicated. Then, of course, they have to worry about things like pirating, but yeah, they have...
Well, and they have to worry about things like live service and people's expectations to buy one thing and to continue to play that one thing for 1, 2, 3, 5, or 10 years.
All these excuses that they've come up with to add on $10 extra on the standard edition, and you don't even get early access. However,
you don't get early access, and I mean, is it not a good industry thing to maybe split, like, you know, access times or whatever? That's fine. Like, that's a conversation. That's a fair conversation to have. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but you guys let me know what you think down in the comments.
there is a little bit of a catch to early access, as noted here. As the first few days of a game can be the absolute worst days. I'll happily let others pay and play before me and suffer on my behalf. So yeah, essentially, there's probably going to be a large portion of this community that is unfortunately going to be paying to be QA tester.
Well, I don't think you'll get the day one patch. I don't think you'll have the day one patch, and we all know day one patches are notorious anymore for, like, fixing a lot of bugs and issues. So you'll be playing without the day one patch. You are going to have queues. You're going to have wait times. They are going to stress test the servers. And then after that's all done, after the 4 days, you're going to be back into queues because the rest of the majority is going to come in. Plus, you're going to have day one patches. But at the end of the day, you are going to get in and play. I don't think it's as much of a big deal for people who just want to play the game if you don't get the 4-day access. But I think for a lot of people, content creators, aspiring content creators, people like that, the 4 days is, I mean, if it's an option, they have to go for it.
Unpaid QA tester to really go in there and test out the servers. Essentially, it's going to be paving the way for those of you that get the standard edition of the game. Now, we have this comment right here.
And his statement right there, those of you that have the standard edition, which is very telling, saying that he's already bought the, you know, the higher end package, which I did and which most people are going to do.
Let me know what side of the fence you're on, by the way.
I would be surprised. I'm curious to see what the ratio of standard versus non-standard edition purchases are for the game. I would really like to see that statistic post-launch.
Since I'm on the wait a few years until it's 90% trained, so a few more days doesn't really matter to me. So some people, 8,700 people to be exact, are willing to wait a few years to really get into Diablo 4. Probably when they release like a collector's edition or something like that with every single form of content in it, which is actually kind of smart. Also, have to consider that a lot of these people have a huge backlog. It says right here, yeah, this is really the best way to counteract this crap. Don't buy into it. See if they take the time to actually make the game work. See how predatory their monetization gets. It's Activision. It's probably going to be horrendous. Grab it at a...
So this person here, Gonkar, this kind of person here is the kind of person that I think no matter what you do, you're not going to appease this particular gamer. Because of the way they are sort of like arguing for their point. They've got a backlog. They don't care. They have no intention of playing the game right now. No matter what you change, they already have an issue with Activision. They're already thinking the monetization is going to be bad. And it sounds like they're the kind of person that is like a buck the trend and go, no, I'm going to use my wallet to send a message. I'm not going to buy the game day one. I'm going to make them make things right before I consider buying it. And then grab it at a discount later if it passes the test. So unfortunately for somebody like this, and I guess maybe the 2,000 people that upvoted their comment, you're not going to appease these people no matter what you do with the game.
At a discount later on if it passes the smell test. My backlog is honestly too massive at this point. Yeah, my backlog, I've really honed in on one strategy when gaming anymore. It's just focusing on one game at a time. Even if something new comes out, I'm like, yo, I need to finish this first. Back up. Hold on. Yeah, we'll see what happens with Diablo 4 in the long term when it does come to monetization schemes and that sort of thing. Now,
you will, and that's all you can do. Monetization, I hate that people keep bringing it up. All you can do is wait and see. We only have what we've been told, and we have to wait and see.
Blizzard has been very vocal about this game not being pay to win. We will be having a battle pass that has cosmetics only, but I want to see how far they go with certain elements.
And see, sentences like that make me think that certain people have a preconceived notion in their head, and it's going to be very hard to change their mind. A statement like, Blizzard has been very vocal that they don't want to have any pay-to-win monetization. However, blah, 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 we need to wait and see. What do you say? Like, what do you say to somebody who's taking that stance? There's nothing you can say. I am definitely a wait and see kind of person, but I don't think the qualifying statement in the beginning needs to be used. If Blizzard says that there's not going to be a pay-to-win monetization, then that's just where you have to go.
Of their structure with the battle pass even. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to dissect that when it comes time. But yeah, let's get into some questions to the dev team and official replies, shall we? So we have this one right here. Let me zoom it in first of all. It says, what did the devs, or at least the systems team, take away from the beta? Widely hearing Barbs felt weak, the dungeons became very tedious, even only after a few days.
Barbs felt weak. It was a beta. It was sub-level 100. It doesn't matter. The dungeons became tedious. Everything becomes tedious. I do want to see what they do. I do want to see the dungeon systems expanded and become better. But I stand behind things that I've said in the past, which is no matter what you add, you can add 50 different raids, and people will be like, these raids are tedious. These raids feel samey. Because over time, they just will. It's just how fast do you get to that point, and how fast does your general player base get to that point? Because you're not looking at somebody like me or somebody that's going to put 100 or 200 hours in the first couple weeks, or somebody's going to put 1,000 hours in the season. You're not looking at those people going, well, what's their experience? You're going to go, well, what is the person that's going to put 60 or 80 hours in all season? That's the vast majority of your player base. What's their experience? And if they don't see an issue with that experience, then that's the experience they're going to continue to move forward with. Do you know what I mean? So did it feel, did dungeons feel samey or whatever? Yeah, because we literally were running the same dungeons over and over again because we only had access to the first zone with the first characters, with no modifiers, and everybody was putting in, 30 or 40 hours in a weekend on the game because they wanted to try it out.
And we have a response here from Gorin of Blizzard, who goes on to say this right here. He says, take class balance right now with a grain of salt. You can expect balance to change significantly as you gain additional levels and more skill points.
Yep.
Items and systems Paragon become available. Beta was fun. I'm very much looking forward to making a druid for some reason. Yes.
Exactly. Don't look at a snapshot and go, this is the, you know what I mean? This was what we got, right? So this is all of fucking Diablo 4. That was going to be a P. That's not going to work. This is all of Diablo 4. And for the beta, we got this much content. For the beta, we got this, and people are asking for changes. People are asking for changes based on that little bit of content. It doesn't make sense.
The druid's abilities begin to expand big time as you go beyond the beta zone, which is Fractured Peaks, and you head into their homeland, which is Scotchglen. I cannot wait to see what the druid's ultimate power will be once we finally tap into that, because I think there's a lot of hidden secrets there.
I think there's going to be a lot of different things for every class, and I think that the beta was just a snapshot.
As are with many of the other classes, including the Barbarian here. Apparently, we didn't even get close to tapping into all of his abilities.
No, but I think the Barbarian is going to rely a lot on taunt and bringing things to him, because things that run away. And Asmund and a few other people who have talked about why melee characters feel so bad have valid points, which is going here, standing in this poison or whatever. Don't move out of it because the boss won't move, but you need to do DPS. Like, those things aren't fun. They don't feel good. And when you run into a group of mobs and everything runs from you and scatters, and you're trying to chase it down and hit it, doesn't feel good. So those are the things I want to see how you can address later on, and maybe it'll be something that gives you like a faster cooldown on taunt, or a way to suck in more mobs and keep things on top of you, or a way to push mobs out of poison, like bosses and stuff like that. So I'm curious.
All right, so we have this one right here as well. What is the comparative size of the Diablo team versus the WoW team? The WoW team seems to make changes 3 to 4 times faster than Diablo can. Is that because of WoW editor or the single platform? Does Diablo have a comparative tool? Anything you can comment on without blowback? And we have a response here from Goran, who says this. Hard to say, really. The WoW team is pretty big, but the Diablo team as a whole houses Diablo 2 Resurrection, Diablo 1, Diablo 3, and Diablo 4. Comparing WoW to Diablo 4, I'd say WoW is probably bigger, and you have to also consider that WoW is very much online all the time.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. Like, the Diablo team is split up amongst a lot of different Diablos, and that's just the way it's going to be. So there wasn't really enough information, or the information I wanted to hear there. I would like to hear what their split is going to be on live team versus new content team. But I don't know that we'll ever get those exact numbers, at least not in the first couple seasons.
They have to watch over it. It's kind of Blizzard's baby as well, as is Diablo. Don't get me.
I think if Diablo 4 does very well, they will pull more resources towards it. As one starts to make more money than the other ones, especially with Diablo 2, Diablo 3 being legacy games that are older. If Diablo 4 really starts to take the front and center and make them all the money, I could see where they could start pulling resources from other teams and sort of backburnering those teams because they're not really providing them the resources they need, and maybe even start to pull services from them.
Wrong, but Diablo is definitely not,
because they're old fucking games.
More of a MMO experience. It's like a hybrid, so I don't think they need as many people on it for that reason. However, with that being said, I hope they are prepared to support this game in the long term, because that is something that they have promised, of course. So when it comes to big expansions,
I mean, they're gonna support it. Look how they support the current games.
I don't want to hear that it's taking forever for them to release an expansion like, say, Cyberpunk 2077 and its situation with Phantom Liberty. It has taken way too long for us to get an expansion for that game, at least in my opinion. All right, so we have another question here as well. It goes on to say this. Interesting. In the second part, is it possible to have all platforms draw from a master source that can push changes simultaneously without the need to make individual changes? Or does different network architectures prevent it? Wow, what a great question.
I would imagine I mean, I would imagine they should be able to do something similar, but it's going to be, I don't know. Let's listen. I don't want to speculate. I'm not a
And the
fucking
response is
network
as
guy.
follows. Oh, sure, that's already a thing. It has been a thing since Diablo 3. However, pushing changes out simultaneously is easier said than done.
Yep. And this line right here, console patches and hot fixes have to go through an approval process through the manufacturer. That is why it is so much harder to get changes on console than it is on PC. And that's why games that release exclusively on PC or on PC first, which is rare, and it's more normally like indie games that are doing that. The reason they elect to go that way is because they can make changes on the fly, and they can do it very, very quick. PlayStation or Sony and Microsoft have a stringent sort of set of loophole or set of like red tape and hoops you have to jump through to prove your patch and your hotfix before you can even deploy it, to ensure that it's not going to come out and fucking break everything or do whatever. And it takes a lot more time. So it does slow things down, but I can see what they're saying, that they've already got a system in place to distribute them all at the same time once they get them certified.
Console hotfixes and patches have to go through an approval process through the manufacturer. PC has a lot less red tape. Now, on the server side of things, they seem to be pretty good at updating things, at least from the experience with the beta. Like, they were getting stuff out, rolling out essentially simultaneously across the board very easily.
And it seemed like they were doing a lot of server-side patching without you really having to upload or download anything on your client side. Like, I didn't really download that many patches. I don't remember downloading really any patches during the beta. But they were making client-side changes nonstop that were improving stability and things like that. So, kudos.
But I'm curious to see how far this will go at the full release. If it's going to be like PC gets the patch, hours ahead, a day ahead. We'll have to wait and see. We've seen that happen before with...
You're going to have a hard time doing that if everything is crossplay. Like, if it's crossplay and I can play with Xbox or I can play with PlayStation, it's going to be very hard to push a patch to one system and not all of the other ones, because then your crossplay doesn't work anymore, right? Like, I can't play with other people that don't have the patch, or now you have to add in like additional infrastructure to deal with game versions, like who's playing with what game version and how those game versions interact with each other. Like, I don't see them doing that. They'll just delay a patch. If it's like a 3-hour difference in a patch, they'll just delay it.
Certain other games. More recently, I can think of Hogwarts Legacy had that issue where certain platforms were getting stuff out first, but...
Hogwarts Legacy is also a single-player game. That makes a huge difference. On a single-player game, that's definitely a lot different because you're not dealing with all the issues that I just outlined.
Yeah, it seems like they're really in tune to this and they want to make an effort to get it all out simultaneously. Furthermore, we have this one right here. Amy goes on to ask, careful with the 4000 series. Diablo 4 was bricking them during the beta.
That was just due to fucking ignorance on Diablo's part. Why devs do not add an FPS limiter to menus and cutscenes and shit like that, I don't understand. Either it's very, very challenging to do, or it's just a complete fucking oversight. My guess is that it's an oversight because this was probably developed on console and you don't have those issues on console. And then when you like port it into PC, it's just not something you think about. I imagine it's not that hard to put an FPS limiter in it.
Yeah, so yeah, we heard a lot of stories and
I mean, it's just because you're fucking cranking out like 10,000 frames.
rumors how there were graphics cards, specifically the 3080s, that were bricking PCs when you were playing the Diablo 4 beta and was related to some sort of cinematic. Adam Fletcher goes on to say this. He says it wasn't. So from their experience internally, that was not the case. Let me know.
And Adam could have been very accurate because they specifically called out 40 series cards. But I mean, all in all, we did hear horror stories of GPUs getting fucked up. I don't know if they were fried, but they were definitely like causing systems to shut down. And typically what it boils down to is there's just not an FPS limiter. And there should be a hard limit on FPS. Like, you don't need 1,000 frames per minute on a cutscene.
Any of you were running on the 40 series and had your graphics card bricked? Because I have not heard too many stories.
I heard about systems shutting down, but I don't know that I've not personally heard anybody that came to me and said, I literally had to get a new GPU. But I did hear people say that their GPUs were overheating and shit.
About this, it's not like, oh my god, an overwhelming amount of people have had their entire systems bricked. It takes a lot for that to happen. I think there has to be something already wrong with the PC for that to happen. Now we have this right here. Could you please create an option to turn off floating damage? I really dislike seeing the damage numbers on the screen. The attack status rolls like dodge, dazed, fortified, vulnerable. Would be nice if you would do it. And we have a response from Adam Fletcher, who goes on to confirm that please don't spam me, and you can. So that is actually an option that is available.
And I mean, I know there are a lot of people that really like that part of the game, and being able to turn that off to really help with the immersion. So I figured it would be in the game. So that's a good news, right?
In the game. Now this question was for Rod Ferguson. It says, are there any plans for mouse and keyboard for Diablo 4 on consoles? Thanks in advance. By the way, even in beta, Diablo 4 rocks. And
I'd say a lot of that's going to depend on the manufacturers. Like, I don't think Sony allows it. Like, I don't think Sony typically allows for M&K support in their games. Maybe they do. Let's listen.
Rod Ferguson goes on to confirm the following right here. He says, nothing beyond what the consoles already support natively.
And that's what I thought. Like, I think Microsoft allows M&K on certain things, but I'm pretty sure Microsoft is like, or I'm pretty sure Sony's a hard no on most of it, and Microsoft is a little bit more okay with it. But you guys that play on console, let me know what consoles support natively. That's my understanding right now, but I could be wrong.
So, there's your answer right there. Now we have Philip, who says, I really enjoyed the Horatic Bestiary feature in Diablo Immortal. It adds to the story, lore, and adventure. Will Diablo 4 have some feature like this for us to discover the secrets of all the demons and beasts we slay along the way? Great question. And Rod Ferguson goes on to confirm, not at launch, but he's not outright saying no there. So
not at launch. I mean, that's fair. I could see where they didn't implement it, but if it's like some fun thing that they could put in easily, great. If not, please don't devote a lot of effort to it. Make better gameplay features and shit. Like adding a bestiary that 85% of your population's never going to read is not a very high priority.
I imagine that something like that would be coming down the road for the game. All right, now it's time to get into your top comments. Remember, leave a comment down.
So, let's go. So, I don't know. That's my thought. So, there was definitely some good information in here. There was some information about, you know, the new features and what players weren't happy about. I do think a lot of it is, I don't know. A lot of it is definitely people projecting what small groups are concerned with. But ultimately, let me know what you guys thought down in the comments. If you agreed or disagreed with anything I said, or if you have a counterpoint, or if you have a video or something you want to see me react to or give my thoughts on, definitely let me know. And as always, have a great day.